Howdy, everyone. So from my perspective, it's been quite a while since I've done any videotaping on these cowlings, just because, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to talk about, just because it really does come down to fitting it and then making note of what needs to be cut, sanded, reshaped, whatever, and then refitting it, making note what needs to be changed, make the changes, refit it. So just like we've all heard, just like everybody who has done it in the past has said, it really literally is put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, hundreds of times. So I don't have any real particulars to talk about. These are still not finished. I'm still working on them. It is very tedious. It does take time. I'm going really slow, trying to get these as good as I can get them. But I will talk about a few things just to kind of keep in mind when you get to this point. A lot of the fiberglass, let me think. Well, let me start with this. So this is the bottom cowling here. And before, when I had first started, I had talked about this flange had come all the way around this area, and I had cut it down per the instructions, but I left a little bit of this flange sticking out on this face right here. And obviously I've since then cut that completely off. That was giving me trouble. There was a little bit of a flange here, there was a little bit of a flange here, and those were giving me issues. So when I cut them off, just like the plans tell you to, that made a big difference. Things started to fit a little nicer. The other thing is the interface, or the transaction from this flange to this piece. This area in here had quite a bit of a fillet, like a rounded fillet. So I had to come in here with a file and make sure that this face here was flat and this face here was flat down in this corner, because that fillet was so big that the pieces weren't fitting that great. So I cleaned up all of these corners around the bottom of this flange on both sides. And then there were areas like the flange itself. This will be a good example here. You can see this flange. You can see how skinny it is down here. And then it gets fatter here, and then around this corner it's really fat. That was true also on this face. This flat face here was kind of wavy, and it was a little bit fat in some areas and skinny in others. So again, I just came in here and just tried to make this nice and flat, so it wasn't wavy or anything like that. It was causing trouble when I put the other cowling over top of this. It would stick out, and that's because this was not nice and flat. And then, of course, you've got the corresponding surfaces on the other cowling. So like I had just talked about, that same area on the top cowling, this area here was really fat in some locations. And when I would fit it to the other cowling, this face here would stick out. So I had to come in here with my Dremel and clean all of this out in here. All of this in here needed to be cleaned out. This corner up in here needed to be cleaned out. This face needed to be cleaned out. There was just a lot of fiberglass and a lot of unevenness, and I wanted this to be all nice and smooth and flat. And I had to do that on both sides. This might be a little bit easier to see because of the lighting. But I just came in here with a Dremel and a little drum sander and cleaned all of this out. And those kinds of things probably made the biggest difference. You'll just have to go around and see where the fiberglass is really fat and thick and kind of take that down. I had to do that quite a bit going back to the bottom cowl me see if I can lay this down. Hold on a second. So this is the bottom cowling, and this area right here, hopefully you can see where I sanded this back. This transaction from this piece over to this piece, this curved area right here, had a lot of really thick, heavy fiberglass. This out here is nice and thin. This bolts to the bottom of the fuselage. And this face here of the cowling would fit nice and flush with the skin of the fuselage. But as I came down here, this face was sticking way too low. And the reason was that this fiberglass in here was really thick. And it still is a little bit right in here, right? You can see where it's been rubbing from fitting it on and off of the fuselage so many times. You can see that spot and the same spot over here. So I've been slowly, again with my Dremel and my little tiny drum sander, I've been taking this down so that it will fit better, both in relation to the skin here and the actual piece that it will ultimately screw to. So those are the things, those are probably the biggest things to look out for. Are if you've got things that won't fit, they won't slip into one another correctly, look for super thick laid up fiberglass and start shaving that down a little bit, and you'll note that things will start to fit in place a little nicer. Other than that, I don't have any other real recommendations other than to really go slow. And unfortunately, there's no way around it. You really do need to fit the cowling, take it off, fit it, take it off, fit it, taking off. And it is a pain, but it has to be done. It is satisfying when you make the correct change and you fit it back together and something looks a lot better. Things start to fit nicer. That is quite rewarding. So it's just a matter of getting your head around it and sticking with it. The other thing to consider that I've noticed is you make a change on something. I don't care which cowling it is, the top or bottom, and I don't care if it's in the front, the back, the underneath, wherever. It will change things that you wouldn't think it would change. I could make a change in this corner here, and it will have an effect on this bottom back corner down here. So these things are very flexible. They're not a solid part. So when you make a change in one corner, it's going to tweak something else. Keep that in mind. You may have to look in weird places to fix a problem. If you're having a problem in here, as strange as it sounds, it could very well be because this is not fitting correctly. And that's an exaggeration, but you get my point. You really need to really go slow and put one or both pieces on the airplane and just start moving stuff around to get a feel for, if I bring this corner up, what happens to this front edge? If I move this front corner back, what happens to the front edge on this piece? And that's really all I can say. The planes are custom built. Every plane is going to be different, right? The cowlings are mass-produced fiberglass. They're going to have anomalies in them. There are different cowlings available. So everybody's going to have a slightly different combination and different things that are going to need to be worked on to get it right. So unfortunately, that's all I can tell you is to go slow, take your time, and really pay attention to what you're changing and how that change affects everything else. So at this point, I am doing just more of the same. I am just fitting and refitting and double checking and, trying to get these as best that I can installed. I don't think they're going to be perfect. I already have some things that I'm not entirely pleased with, but at this point, there's nothing I can do about it. And I'll show you that when I get them back together. But my biggest concern is making them fit with little to no stress, because I don't want to be popping piano hinge knuckles down the road or have unnecessary cracking, early in the game once I start flying. So I'm trying to get them to fit, no stress, very little stress, and have them look semi-decent. So that's the goal. I'm going to continue to work, and I'll come back and talk to you guys later.